Hello and welcome to the Minds on the Frontline podcast, brought to you by the Frontline Strong Together 5 program. FST5 provides streamlined access to behavioral and mental health services, as well as crisis resources for Michigan's Frontline 5 workers and their families. This includes all professional, part-time, and volunteer firefighters, EMS, law enforcement, corrections officers, and 911 dispatchers in Michigan and their immediate family members. First responders and mental health experts collaboratively created FST5 to provide 24/7 live support, effective resources, and cutting-edge services to prevent and alleviate PTSD, anxiety, depression, and other frontline work-related mental and behavioral health challenges. Need help now? If you are a frontline worker in Michigan or an immediate family member experiencing any crisis, work-related, substance abuse, depression, relationships, finances, or any other, reach out by calling 1-833-34-STRONG or go to fst5.org for more information. I'm Jeff Lassers, one of the hosts of the Minds on the Frontline podcast, and I'm a professional firefighter, paramedic, educator, and content creator. Minds on the Frontline is co-hosted by Mike Mattern, who is also a professional firefighter and paramedic. In addition, Mike is a peer support team member for his fire department and the Frontline Strong Together 5 program, a board member of the Michigan Crisis Response Association, and the former chair of the Michigan Professional Firefighters Union Behavioral Health Committee. Mike has training and experience with frontline worker mental and behavioral health. On the other hand, I do not. My role is to produce the show, whereas Mike is our resident subject matter expert. Together, we hope to inform, educate, and entertain frontline workers, their families, and the public regarding the realities of frontline work-related mental and behavioral health challenges. In this episode, we welcome back Manisha Leary, the FST5 Program Manager and a clinical therapist specializing in trauma. September is Suicide Prevention Month. To honor this important focus, the Minds on the Frontline podcast is dedicating episodes to addressing the urgent issue of suicide among frontline workers. Throughout this episode, Mike, Manisha, and I will continue our conversation on suicide prevention, providing key insights on how to recognize behavioral changes and verbal cues that may signal suicidal thoughts. We also discuss how to approach and communicate with someone who might be experiencing these thoughts, sharing best practices and highlighting what to avoid in these challenging conversations. Finally, we provide actionable steps that can be taken to support suicide prevention efforts within your community, emphasizing the crucial role that family, friends, and available resources play in reducing stigma and encouraging people to seek help. After the interview, we delve into 3 deeply personal stories that underscore the real-life impact of suicide and the importance of seeking help. Each story serves as a powerful emotional wrap-up to the episode, highlighting the urgency of addressing suicide within our communities. First, we hear from Christy Burris, a retired 911 dispatcher who bravely shares her journey from suicidal ideation to finding hope through therapy and peer support. Christy's journey emphasizes the critical importance of reaching out and the transformative power of the right help at the right time. Next, Officer Steve Dlazinski recounts the devastating loss of his best friend and fellow officer to suicide. Steve's story is a poignant reminder of the lasting impact that suicide leaves on those left behind. He highlights the importance of having difficult conversations and making a personal commitment to never avoid these critical discussions again. Finally, Ashley Freeman, an EMT, reflects on the profound pain of losing her father to suicide and the challenges she faced in navigating life without him. Ashley's story is a moving testament to the enduring grief that follows such a loss, but also a reminder that it is okay to find joy and happiness even amidst sorrow. She urges others to seek help, emphasizing that no one should have to struggle alone and that support is always available. This turned out to be a great episode that not only sheds light on the critical issue of suicide prevention among frontline workers, but also offers practical strategies, heartfelt stories, and a message of hope that will resonate deeply with our listeners and hopefully make a positive impact. And maybe even save a life. Please check us out on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and make sure to like and subscribe to all Minds on the Frontline podcast social media channels. Thank you, and enjoy the show. Mike and Manisha, welcome back to the Minds of the Frontline studio.
What's going on, Jeff?
Oh, not much.
Hey, guys.
Manisha's back.
I'm
back.
First time in the studio.
Back.
Yes. She had, Wayne State and Frontline Strong pick up the bill. She might as well come see it.
Yeah, come sit at the table and look at it.
Absolutely.
Enjoy it.
It's amazing. You guys rocked it out in here.
Yeah, we love it in here. It's got good vibes.
We thank you and Frontline Strong and Wayne State for having all this.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, we're at the Tolan Park Medical Building, and here there's the behavioral sciences, essentially. Manisha, what do they do in this building?
We do a little bit of everything. So this is Tolan Park is kind of like our brain hub center. So this is all the things where we do the neurosciences, how medications, different therapeutic treatments, and cognitive therapy. So again, talk therapy and things like that. So we analyze all of that here. We talk about how it works. And in this building itself, we house 3 really important sections. So we have the SUD clinic, which is on our first floor. That helps
Substance use disorder.
Yeah.
For those who don't know SUD.
Yes.
They're not on the inside.
You guys know that I'm like an acronym.
No, we got you.
No, we're in your building.
That's
kind of what you do here.
So substance use disorder. Yep. That's where all things when people are struggling with self-medication and things like that, they handle it on the first floor. On our third floor, we have our clinical therapy clinic there. So we do all things with EMDR, neurofeedback, and these are all treatments for anxiety, depression, PTSD, psychosis, having delusions, all kinds of things. We cover all mental health diagnoses and disorders in that clinic there. And we do a lot of research in that clinic as well. So then on our fourth floor, we have a clinic where we help people with their kind of physical health concerns. We address AIDS and HIV clinic patients there, patients who don't often get a chance to go to their primary care doctors or don't have it or don't have insurance to go there. So we actually have an internal medicine clinic here as well. So that's awesome. And then on our fifth floor is all things, everything research. Anything that we need to get into pilot projects or studies on to see if the treatments that we're currently doing can either, one, be improved, or if there's any other new treatments that we need to be on the leading cause of. So,
and when you say we, Wayne State.
Yes. So when I say it hurts me to say this sometimes because I bleed blue, but I am a Wayne Stater. Yes. So Wayne State is what I talk about. When I say we, I'm talking about Wayne State University and Wayne Health together. We come together in this Tolan Park building, both entities, to cover all things.
And it was this department, this section of the university in Wayne Health,
yes,
that was able to get the grant for Frontline Strong,
yes,
to service the data for what treatments and access to all sorts of behavioral health stuff. Mm-hmm. And so Frontline Strong came together. Everybody knows about it now. And one of the big things that we're really pushing is the suicide hotline, as well as the phone number for FST5 for anything, which really goes to the same call hub.
Yes.
When you need help, you call it, right? Mm-hmm. So you've put a lot of work into this, obviously. Before I even got here and started helping you out with the podcast, you guys already had a foundation. You guys had it rolling. I'm just here making funny YouTube videos and doing fun stuff with you guys. So what motivated you to put all that work into this?
Okay, so the motivation mostly comes from kind of the reason why we do the things that we do here in this building itself is our goal is to improve the lives of others. And when it comes to Frontline Strong, our goal ultimately is to help those who help us. That's the bare basis of what we need to do. Once we started this, I think people have heard the kind of the history with Frontline Strong, but once we got into this, we didn't come in as clinicians who thought we knew everything. We had to come in and learn about the 5 disciplines that we work with the first responders that we work with. And so from that, we've learned a lot in these last couple of years, and we have taken what we've learned and put it into a method that works, a way to provide resources, provide treatment, provide access to resources and treatment, and we're offering it into the entire state of Michigan. Our goal is to make sure that we have a healthy state.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Mike, same question, and everybody kind of knows that, but I want to break it up a little bit more for you. Not only what motivates you to help first responders with mental and behavioral health from the whole spectrum, from just like very minor anxiety to crippling depression, PTSD. What motivates you there? And then also our topic today, what motivates you to really help people to prevent suicides?
Well, I think it goes back to just personal experience. Being a first responder, I had my issues years ago where I had nowhere to turn to. And it was, you were kind of left on your own to your own devices, and there was no peer support. There was no clinicians. There were no anything. They gave you an EAP card and kind of sent you on your way. And, you know, that sent me down a pretty dark path that I went down. And, you know, I remember at one point sitting there feeling like there was nobody I could talk to. There was nobody. You felt very alone. And I remember when I went to go talk to my therapist, one of the times she said, well, you know, do they have anything where you can talk to other firefighters? And I started laughing at her, actually. I said, no, absolutely not. And she goes, well, why don't you start one? And I remember sitting there, I'm like, and I told her, I go, it will never work. It'll never work. We'll get laughed out of the building. And the more and more I thought about it, it was like typical first responders. We see a problem, we fix it. That's really how I got into it, was being on the other side of it and realizing that lonely feeling where you think you're the only one. And with conversations with other first responders, I learned that, wow, like they're feeling the same way I'm feeling. And that was my first introduction to peer support, when there really wasn't any peer support. And someone did it for me. And so that was my motivation, was to make sure nobody ever felt like they didn't have somebody to talk to. That's how I really got into the peer support realm. And even when it got into the suicide portion of it, you remember where you came from and those feelings that you had. That's what I never want somebody else to feel. So that's really my motivation, not only for doing the peer support stuff, but also working with Frontline Strong and doing the programs here and doing the podcast, is that I've been in that spot where you feel alone. You're down in that hole and you're like, no one gives a shit about me. And you think something's wrong with you. And that's what my motivation was to never have somebody feel that way. Being there, feeling those feelings, being in that position, that's the motivation every day to pick up the phone and talk to people, come in here and do the podcast, put on classes, you name it. That's the motivation, is to make sure when I walk away from this years from now, we now have something better than how I started. You know, you leave it better than how you found it. And that's really what it is so down the road, those people don't have those feelings. They don't have the, you know, I don't know who I can talk to. No, here, I got plenty of people. And you want to talk to somebody, talk to me. I've been in a similar situation. So that's where it all comes from.
I love it. I love it. And it's really helping to shape a culture of not only continuous learning, but continuous growth, which fosters resiliency and good coping skills and the things to kind of prevent the problem in the first place. So we're kind of working our way backwards from the immediate needs, and you're seeing this thing proliferate and really grow. And a lot of the education and content we've put out has been, I think, heartwarming to a lot of people and showing them they're not alone. A lot of people have come on this show and, well, they've certainly teared me up a bunch. So I'm sure,
absolutely.
You know,
yeah.
so.
That's why we got our Kleenex right here.
Right. It's our official box
Yes.
of Kleenex now.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we continue to foster this culture and to make it okay for everybody. And I think this group's become a really good ambassadors for that message. And I'm not talking about just the three people sitting here. There's so many people involved in FST5 that are making sure resources are getting to our frontline workers and getting to their family members that need it. So thank you guys for all the hard work.
It's not just us, like you said. It's a huge team.
Yeah, think of the team that's listening right now.
You might see the three of us doing this and talking all the time, but the team of people that are behind it, I mean, it's immense.
Yeah, I couldn't be more thankful for you guys and all the work that you do. Our entire FST5 team is amazing, but we're only as good as the people that we work with. So it's actually really kudos to the first responders in the state of Michigan.
Heck yeah. So the topic today is suicide prevention. We all know that it happens. And really the topics here today is to talk about what are we looking for when one of our colleagues might need a shoulder to be leaned on a little bit, to accept a little bit of their burden and kind of help them out. So let's start off with what are we looking for? What are some of those key behavioral changes, those verbal cues, those signs and symptoms we might see and our colleagues, or really any human being that may be in a state of suicidal ideation? And it might be helpful to kind of define that before you kind of answer that too.
Do you want to do the definition before
I will.
I think she's most appropriate to do the definition.
Yeah.
Yes.
So suicidal ideations, and I'm actually really happy that you brought that up, because I think people kind of sometimes get it confused at what an ideation is. So suicidal ideations is when you're starting to have thoughts of not wanting to be here anymore. It leads into from just the thought of saying, hey, life would be different if I wasn't here. My family would be better off if I wasn't here. But it starts to take, an ideation is when you start to take that thought into actually developing a plan. You're going into like, hey, I could do it this way, or I could do it that way, or this would be a less impact on my family. So when it becomes actually something that you're starting to think through in terms of a process, this as in how you can or would do it. I know a lot of people will say, oh, I have fleeting thoughts like that, or when I'm really depressed, I'll have a thought like that, but it's not something that I'm acting on. It becomes an ideation when you think that it can become something that you actually act on and develop a plan to implement. So I think that's important for people to know.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's, to kind of give some people some thought of like, do I have ideation? It's like you're really segregating the two different thoughts there. Is the suicidal thoughts are these things that kind of pop into your head of, I should just kill myself, or if I wasn't here, things would be easier. And it's just an overarched statement of if this, then things would be better.
Right.
Whereas you're saying, okay, well, let's go ahead and how am I going to get that done? Right.
What are my means?
Once you have a planning
what are my
step,
means?
even if you're not entertaining the date, time, location, the fact that you're taking it past this fleeting thought of just a thought, that's when it becomes more probably easier to spot and see.
Sometimes, not necessarily. I mean, when we start talking about what you want to look for, you can't do it in one or two things. And how I like to explain it to people are, there's a bunch of puzzle pieces when it comes to this. And if you put a whole bunch of puzzle pieces just out on the table, they don't look like anything. Okay? So when you put them together, though, that's when the picture starts to become a lot clearer to what we're looking for. So when we talk about these things, it's not just one or two things, but when we get through them, you'll understand what I'm talking about. One of the first things that you're going to see is a personality change within the person. So we start looking at those types of things. But even before you see the change in the person, if you know the person that you're talking to, you know there's situations that could set them up for this. Once you start seeing the signs, it's almost later in the whole gamut of what you're looking at. It starts with, what are they going through? You have somebody who's going through stuff at home, and this is getting to know the people that you work with. That it's one of the most important things. Once you know that and you have that personality, there's people who I work with, the way they walk in the door every day, I can tell you whether they're themselves or not. And that's almost the first thing is like, I know if something's going on at home. It could be, a sick kid. It could be a sick parent. A lot of times with a lot of the suicides, you'll find that there's some type of divorce, child custody stuff. That almost puts me in the direction like, hey, I should be looking at this person, at least keeping an eye on them. It may not be affecting them, but I know something in their life is really getting to them that could lead them in this direction. So that's almost the first sign in prevention is looking at their lives and looking what they're going through. Now, if they don't talk to you about it and they don't want to talk or you don't see it, then that portion's out. But that's getting that interpersonal relationship with the people around you and your coworkers that really is the first step in the prevention portion is seeing those changes at home or, there's life events that are going on. Something that's a catalyst to not only where we go from the thought, this is the catalyst to now go to, well, how am I going to accomplish it? Which is where we get into the suicidal ideation portion of it. Now, once you start seeing signs, and if you really think about it, it's easy to hide it at work. We can all go 24 hours and put a smile on our face. And so if you're starting to see these signs at work, it's already later down the road because they're gonna hide it as much as possible before they show it at work. You never show any weakness at work. So one of the first signs that I talked about was that change in personality. And it could be something as small as, the person who gets their $6 worth of food at lunch and dinner, we all know who they are. All of a sudden they pull up and they got a small plate of food and they're just eating a little bit and you're kind of looking like, what's going on there? That's not like you, because we all have routines, and working closely to each other with, doesn't matter where you're at, dispatch center, police car, an ambulance, firehouse, at the corrections facility, everybody's got a routine. You get to know everybody's routine.
You can't hide your tells.
You can't hide your tells. You know what I mean? So like, if you normally do something every day and I notice that you're not doing that, that's a change in your personality. That, for me now, triggers me to go talk to that person. Like, hey, what's going on? I notice, you're not yourself
invading
today.
them. You're just literally checking in. It could be nothing. They could literally just not feel good.
It could not feel good. They might have had a sick kid who was up all night last night, whatever it might be. But the change, that change in personality and that change in routine automatically triggers me to go talk to them, because I know something isn't right.
Right. So the first thing is knowing your colleagues.
Yes.
The second is when you know something's wrong, a little nudge. And sometimes, like, you might have broken up with a significant other. They might just need a day.
Yeah.
And sometimes, believe it or not, some first responders don't like to just let it all out at the table.
No.
As much as like so many sit down and I get to hear about all their problems, like, oh my God, I can't believe I asked how they're doing. I meant it colloquially.
Yes.
How you doing? Oh, geez, here we go.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
But you start seeing those little personality changes first.
Yeah.
Those are the first thing you're going to see. Then they're going to start progressing. So one of the biggest things that you're looking for next, they're going to not be as social as they normally are. It's almost that self-isolation. So you'll notice that they're tired all the time at work because they're not sleeping, but then they go and try to sleep all day. So it's that isolation from the rest of the population, the antisocial, but normally they are social. So you'll see them start withdrawing a little bit. Then you'll get some people have different personality changes. Some will get a lot of anger issues with it. You'll notice they're a little more depressed. You'll notice that they start talking more about them not being here, but they, in a joking way, like, if I got to go on another run, I'm going to shoot myself, and that's not their personality.
And they do the whole thing like you guys care.
Yeah.
Like you would care if I wasn't.
Exactly. Right? And when I say this, it's not everybody. Not everybody's good. There's some people that will not show a single sign and then complete. But there are those certain things that you can look at and key you in on, okay, maybe something's going on.
That's a really good point, is that we're not talking about 100% of the people.
No.
Nor are we ever. But there is certainly a significant population that tends to present these signs outwardly to where we can check in with them and get them the help. And they might not be suicidal, but they might need, therapy. They might not even need therapy. They might just need a buddy today.
Yeah.
They might need a doc. They might need this. They might need that. They might underlying issue. Yeah.
When you start getting down even further down the road, and this is what I mean when I say it's a bunch of puzzle pieces, because apart they don't look dangerous. They don't look like the road leading to where we're talking about, which is them completing suicide. It could be as simple as your buddy at work and you're real big into mountain biking. All of a sudden they show up at your house and they're like, or within conversation or whatever, they're like, hey, I think I'm going to get out of mountain biking. Do you want my new $5,000 mountain bike? And, the buddy's like, yeah, sure. Whatever. Yeah, sounds good. And what they're really doing is giving away their prized possessions. They're setting them, they know what's going to go on now. So now they're setting stuff up. You start seeing people take care of like banking accounts. They start taking care of things at home or at work, clearing out different banks.
They're getting ready.
And stuff.
But they're literally tying up loose ends.
But how many times have we seen people at work who are like, hey, I'm taking a little something out of the retirement thing because I want to get a new motorcycle?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
wouldn't think twice about that.
Apart, they don't look like anything. Right. Like, hey, I'm withdrawing X amount of dollars from my retirement.
Well, that's maybe something the family would notice, maybe.
Yes.
You mean a family member that you have access to those accounts.
Yes, but if and how I put this together is we got that piece, and now let's backtrack it. They've been isolating at the station. They're not themselves. You see a personality change. Backtrack it even further. They told you 3 months ago they were going through a real nasty divorce with child custody issues. So if I put the child custody issues together with the change in personality, and then I add in the isolation, now giving somebody my bike, and now I'm clearing out one of my banks at work. Now that I put those puzzle pieces together, and after this conversation, the picture's a lot clearer where this is heading.
Right.
But each individual piece doesn't look like anything. that's remotely dangerous. We're heading down that road. And that's why we like to talk about these things. Is it's not necessarily that one or two things that you're going to see. It's putting all those puzzle pieces together.
You're going to see a trend.
You're going to see a trend. And that's really where the prevention happens, is when you take those pieces and you're able to put them together. Because anybody can go, well, look for somebody who's sad, somebody who's in their room. You'll be able to prevent this a lot sooner, the earlier in the stages that you can see this thing.
Right.
You know, so don't wait until you start seeing those signs and symptoms, you know, progressing. Check in on the person who's going
It's really
through
anytime
divorce.
you see these signs that raise that suspicion, because it's not like asking the question is going to be done in an offensive way.
Yes.
So, Manisha, can you kind of break that down a little bit more, those clinical signs and symptoms for us?
Absolutely. I want to be clear that we are saying to people that there's going to be times that none of these things happen. There won't be any signs for you to prevent or even to step in to prevent. So what is some of the things that in terms of prevention that we really like to focus on is normalizing talking about the hard parts, right? Because people often say, I don't want to bring up suicide, or I don't want to talk about somebody hurting themselves, because what if that puts that idea into someone's head? You're not putting the idea into someone's head. You're helping someone say that it's okay to talk about the hard things. It's okay to talk about the thing that no one else is talking about, right? Like if you walk into a room and there's always an elephant in the room, and then everyone's tiptoeing around the elephant, like, I need to get the elephant out of the room.
Well, I can guarantee you that thought has been in their head for way longer than that second that you just asked them about.
If at all, it's been.
If at all. If at all.
Yes.
So it's kind of one of these situations. The more we normalize talking about all the things, the mental health, suicide, but also the more we talk about, this is who you can talk to if you're feeling this way. This is how you reach out to people if you're feeling this way. And that's not even just like a clinical perspective of it. That's just a general talking to your mom, your sister, your brother, your coworker, your spouse, anyone. The more that you guys get comfortable talking about the harder things or the things that have happened on the job that isn't the most comfortable talking about, it allows people to know that it's okay to bring it up in the beginning, right? So, and I think that's the hard part, because again, when we're having that initial thought, people are like, okay, I just had that one thought. It's no big deal. I was having a bad day.
Yeah,
right?
It's almost like the stigma has the stigma.
The stigma has a stigma.
Because it's like, I want to help, but like now I'm afraid to offend you.
Exactly.
Or be uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. It's really uncomfortable to walk up to somebody, even if you love them.
Exactly.
It is.
It can be tough.
It's a very uncomfortable discussion. The other part, I think it is, people are afraid that the person that they're talking to is going to say yes.
Right.
They're afraid of the answer.
They're afraid of the answer.
Let's build up to that, because you got to get the answer. You got to approach them first. And, I mentioned the hard parts.
Yeah.
The easy part is recognizing, I think, that something might be happening. And I say easy because in the context of us working with our colleagues, we see them all the time. Mm-hmm. So that the behavioral change is going to be alarming. We're going to be talking about that person.
Yeah, you'll have bells to go off about it for sure.
What's going on with Billy over there? I noticed it too. I'm going to go check in with them. It's almost that, right? Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that approach. It's not always easy for someone. It might not even be somebody you really like that much, but you're working with them today and they're still a human, right? I mean, there's a lot to really think about here. So, what advice would you give to someone to start that conversation?
You want me to take this? Yeah.
Well, no,
I
think there's a clinical aspect to this, and I think there's a peer support way to do it as well.
Let's start with the clinical then, and then we'll build in she'll give us the book way to do it, and they'll say, all right, now we're going to make it work with our tools.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. So if I am like in a session or seeing a patient where, things are different, or even if this was a family member of mine and I'm handling it clinically, I am going to start in a space where it helps me make sure that there's no immediate need for safety. Meaning, do you have access in this moment? Are you feeling these feelings right now? Is there something that I need to do in this moment? Now, I'm not asking this person all of these questions because they're going to tell me. I'm assessing for it, right? So if you're like, hey, yeah, my plan is to jump off the overpath, that to me would raise some flags. That would be an immediate kind of need. And so clinically, we have to kind of assess for a safety plan, see where you are, see how these thoughts process, how often you've been having these thought processes, And then that leads me to a place of like, how involved do I need to get with this right now?
So
is this something we can handle in therapy and we can talk it through? Or is this something that I need to make an emergency kind of space for doing this right now?
So you're thinking through the considerations before you even approach that person.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you're almost preparing yourself for the yes.
Yes.
Because if you're checking in with them for a reason, and what you're saying is, okay, ding, 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 now I need to check in with this person. Okay, so if they say they're this, then I need to go down this path. If they say they're that, we can go down that path. But
exactly.
I like that you're framing it, because I think it's going to make the next step easier.
Yeah, well, exactly. So clinically, you have to prepare for the yes and the no. Right. And you have to know
if you're gonna approach somebody.
If you're gonna approach somebody and you have these thoughts, like you're noticing all the signs. The person's changing, things are different, their responses to you have been different. And I know Mike was talking about like the person may isolate and depress and be more depressed and things like that. It could be the opposite side of that too. A person can be super happy, super energetic, and doing all of these
compensating.
For these behaviors that you don't normally see. So this person is usually even keel, and then they're coming out here like, oh, let's party, let's do all the things, let's plan everything, let's do all the. That's a red flag as well.
So is the big red flag the change in personality?
The change. Yes, the change, right? And so again, sometimes you'll see this change in some people, and sometimes it'll be so subtle that you can't see it. But clinically, our goal is to be prepared for the uncomfortable. And that's the yes or the no, right? And having a path to go down each one of those things. But you cannot avoid the uncomfortable space. You have to go into the uncomfortable space. Yeah. And I want to remind people, I know that people often hear like, you don't want to be uncomfortable. We can't be uncomfortable in our jobs. That can cause chaos. That can cause us to make mistakes, do all these other things. When we're talking about mental health, the uncomfortable space is where change happens. The uncomfortable space is where we save lives. It's the place where people recognize that there's something wrong. It's the place where people understand that asking for help is okay, and sometimes it's the only place that they recognize that they need to ask for help. Yes, it may be uncomfortable. Yes, you may feel some sort of way about it, but it literally could be the place where you save someone. So leading into that uncomfortable space is what you want to do when you're thinking someone may be having suicidal thoughts or actually has a plan.
So it sounds like rule 1, be aware of what the behavioral changes are. Number 2, when I make this attempt, am I the right person? Somebody's got to be notified, whatever, at least to check in with this person. Whether it's, hey, Mike, go talk to Steve over there, or maybe it's me.
Yeah.
And then be prepared for the spectrum of answers that might come out. Don't just ask because you said, oh, I feel better, and he's going to say fine because everybody just says fine.
Exactly.
You got to be prepared to kind of have that conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, so from your side, the clinical side is you got to be prepared.
You got to be prepared. And
know what you're looking for and be prepared for it.
And you got to lean into the uncomfortable feelings. Yeah. And I know that I'm saying this in a space that I'm equipped with tools that everyone is not equipped with. Right. So my training and my years of experience puts me in a place to be able to do that. So I know that I think from a different lens than most people do, which is why it's important for us to have the peer aspect of it, because peers are not thinking in a clinical space.
Right. But you're at least giving our peers that sense so that maybe guys like Mike can arm guys like me to be prepared for those answers. Because that's where I kind of, as a person who's not trained, and everybody who listens to this on a regular realizes that I'm not a peer in my department nor for FST5. I'm a social media, digital editing, BDD guy. Mike's the peer supporter, right? So he's the one that I would
look to.
You're getting good at it.
Give yourself some credit.
I spent enough time with you and editing enough videos. I want to learn something, right? If I work for Richard or Attenborough, I know all about animals.
There you go.
But in the same context, guys like me rely on guys like you to train me to do these things. Because if nobody's talking to me about it, it's going to be real hard for me to even drum up the courage to have the real bad conversation. If I know you're just having a hard time and you got a breakup or something going on, it's like that common, easy. I know you're not actually depressed, but it is really intimidating to think about having to talk to somebody who might actually be in one of the worst places you could imagine.
Absolutely. And one thing I have to say is having those conversations about just checking in with somebody makes the hard conversations easy because you get practice at it. But if you're the person who's suicidal and I've checked in with you once or twice already, this conversation is a brand new conversation. I've talked to you once or twice and checked in on you to see how you're doing. So take the time to ask about the little stuff. So when it comes to the big stuff, it's not foreign to you, number one. Number two, it is uncomfortable. I don't care how many times I mean, I'm not saying I've done hundreds of them, but every time that I do them, it's still as uncomfortable as it is the first time. Even knowing what I'm going to say and how I'm going to talk to somebody and things like that. I mean, I've literally talked to a person who was sitting there with a gun in their lap drinking on the phone. It's not even a face-to-face. Another time, somebody was standing on the side of a bridge. It's scary. I don't care who you are. Even as a clinician, it's something scary. But you have to, how we approach it, or how I approach it, is just how we approach the small conversations. Hey, Jeff, I'm kind of seeing a couple of these things here, man. Something's going on, man. And inevitably, they'll give you the, nah, I'm all right. And at some point, I look at him, I'm like, I know you're not all right. It's okay to talk about it. I'm seeing this. This isn't like you. I know you got this going on. It's okay to talk about it. You know, it's one of those things. And eventually you have to ask them that hard question. And it's not, you know.
What's the question?
The question is, do you want to commit suicide? And say it that bluntly. I mean, it's not, are you thinking of harming yourself? It's not anything where we sugarcoat it. You go directly at it. But I don't start with that, though. If I walk up to you and say, Jeff, do you want to kill yourself? No. But I have that conversation before asking that question to let them.
Yeah, you start with, this is what I'm seeing.
Well, this is what I'm seeing, but to let them know that I care. Right. I give a shit about you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because if you're at that portion of your suicide journey, you think no one gives a shit about you. If I talk to you for a couple minutes and I say, hey, man, I've noticed this, this is really concerning me. I really care about how you're feeling. And I do. Wow, somebody actually gives a shit about me. I'm not just coming at you with, do you want to kill yourself? Right. I want to let you know I'm invested in you, right? Because I am. I'm invested that you're here tomorrow. And once it gets to a point where I start talking, then I'll ask. People will take it as an abrasive question, one way or the other. But if they know it's coming from a place where I literally do care about you,
love,
then it's a little
compassion.
easier. It's a little easier to say. And I've said it, and people were like, "No, I'm not that bad," you know, like,
sure,
yeah, you know. And it's like, okay, well, you know, I just got to ask. And it's one of those things where I'd rather ask and you tell me that than not ask at all.
And you could certainly need help and not be suicidal.
Exactly. And then
we've all seen people in clinical depression.
Exactly. And sometimes that's how the conversation goes. It's like, well, you know, I haven't been sleeping for a couple of weeks because of this, and this. Okay, cool. Let's get you hooked up with a clinician then. But you got to prepare yourself and you got to ask the question, do you want to kill yourself? Do you want to commit suicide? It's that simple. You don't sugarcoat it. You go right at it.
But you start with love, compassion,
absolutely,
respect. You open up, hey dog, I notice you're doing this. You're setting the stage of, I'm not just here because somebody told me.
Yes.
Here's what I saw. Are you okay? Is maybe an easier thing to ask right away.
Yes.
And then as you talk more, hey, you're telling me X, Y, and Z. Are you suicidal?
Yes.
Because it's hard for me to go, so are you suicidal? But I think I could lead up to that. I think I could lead up with, like, how are you feeling? So do you want to maybe, you know, because it's not going to come out as,
no.
I'm going to try to say it all like, are you suicidal? Like I'm some professional, but like, it's never going to come out that way.
No.
Yeah.
I'm a human talking to somebody who might say yes.
And even on the clinical side, we're not leading with that. We're letting them know these are the things, right? These are the things. And so you want someone to be comfortable enough to do that because it's such an uncomfortable question that people are automatically defensive.
And I think when you're doing like peer support, you get two different sides of it. You either know the person or you don't.
Yeah.
Like you either have a very personal relationship with somebody or you don't. And how you talk to each of those groups is actually a little different sometimes. You know, there's times where I've pushed on the side where, you know, we have a personal relationship and I know things are going on with you and you're like, I'm fine. There might be times where I'm like, listen, man, don't bullshit me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm seeing these things,
But you have a pattern with that person, a history. You might have known them 15 years.
Yes. It's just a different way of talking to each other. And that's where the peer stuff comes in is you have that, if you have that previous relationship with somebody, it's a lot easier to have the conversation where you can be like, you're not fooling me.
Yeah, you can't BS me if I know
you're not fooling me, bro. I've known you for 12 years. We've gone on vacation together. And you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you know, once you have that conversation, just like Manisha talked about, anytime I have that conversation with somebody, I'm prepared for them to say yes. I'm not scared that they say yes, right?
But you got a plan.
But I got a plan, because if they say yes, that's their first step in we can do something about this. And to the point Manisha talks about, because I've mentally prepared myself for them saying yes, there's no change in my tone. There's no change in whatever. I've mentally put myself in the position that this person's going to say yes. And my next question is very similar to what Manisha's talking about. Okay, well, how are you going to do it? What's your plan?
It isn't, let's go get help. It's,
well, because, and the reason I say that is when I ask him, I go, okay, well, what are you going to do? What's your plan? I'm assessing now how imminent it is.
okay.
So if I'm talking to somebody, and
It's a
they're
measuring question.
and they're like, well, you know, I thought about using a gun, and I'm going to shoot myself. Okay, well, where's the gun at? It's actually locked up at my parents' house. Okay, well, where are you at right now? I'm at my house. When you're on the phone, it's a lot harder because you can't see the person. The person could be lying to me, but I'm trying to assess them to see, okay, is this like we need to get over there with?
Because it's going to dictate your next actions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, so then I'm asking that, because now I'm going to go, okay, is this imminent? Like it's sitting on this person's lap? Or, okay, it's locked up at your parents' house and that's a mile away. Okay. You know, it kind of gives me a gauge on where we're at in this process, because things change. If it's imminent, then we really have to start working right then and there. If I got some time, we're not really slowing down, but it gives me at least a buffer zone to let's talk about this. And if they're not in front of you, the other thing is getting resources to them is a tough thing. You may talk to somebody, at least in the peer support capacity, who's not from your department, not from your area. So now you're scrambling to try to get a resource to where they're at. Before Frontline came around, you know, a lot of the only answers were, well, you know, we got to go to the emergency room. You know, none of the first responders want to go to an emergency room.
Especially for that.
Especially for that. Whereas now we have other options that we can go with that are first responder friendly. Me personally, I don't make it about me, but I let them know some of the stuff that I've been through and where I'm at right now. And it kind of personalizes it where it's not, I'm not talking to you in a clinical sense. I'm talking to you like, bro, I've been in the hole. I made it out.
Right.
Let me,
and you're not saying
show
that
you
you're
the
going to
way
get
out.
through this, you're fine. You're saying is like, no, I just want you to know you have hope.
Yes.
Because others have been there
Yes.
the same. It's really,
Yes.
it's really a measure of hope. Like, it's not a death sentence.
Yes. It's not. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah. Well, it normalizes too the thoughts or like the process that you're going through, the feelings that you're having. It normalizes that you're not the only person, because sometimes when a person can get to the point of where they're thinking of wanting to harm themselves, they feel like they're on this island alone and they have to, you know, like there's no way out of it sometimes. But when you're talking through about your own kind of situation or some things that you've been going through or experiences that you've been through, it kind of normalizes it a little bit to say, okay, I'm not out here by myself and other people have been through this situation. Maybe there's a different path. Maybe there's something different that I can do or that I can, you know, maybe talk to someone about that doesn't lead me down this plan that I thought I had. Kind of having a 1, 2, 3 step makes people feel comfortable with, you know, figuring out a way of prevention, but there is no right or wrong way to really say, I've noticed this, but I didn't say anything. And so we don't want people to feel like, oh, because I didn't say anything, that's something that you could have prevented. If someone has made up their mind that they're going to do this, sometimes there's sometimes things that we can't do. We just want people to be comfortable with recognizing that this happens so frequently. It's happening so frequently in our own state. And if we don't try to at least have the conversations, it's going to continue to be losing people to self-harm and dying by suicide. So,
well, I think some of the other things that people are worried about is I don't know what to say.
Yeah, that's
right?
what I was going to ask you. Is like when you get there, I'm really breaking this down mechanically, and that's how I think. I need a plan.
Yeah.
And it's just like going on a fire. How big is this thing? Are we offensive or defensive? Do I got to get there now? Is it a priority one? Is it you know what I mean?
One of the advice that I give a lot of the people is if you're doing this right, you're not talking a lot. The people on the other side want to be heard. And I'll tell you, they want to talk about what's going on. They're scared to, right? They're hoping somebody just asks them, a lot of times, asks them what's going on with them, because they can't just come out and do it. A lot of this is just listening to them. People feel like they're heard, and that's what's really going to save them, is that somebody's going to listen to them and let them talk. It's not always this, I'm going to talk you off a ledge, or I'm going to do this. A lot of the times, peer support and even talking to individuals who are in crisis like this, you're not saying a lot of stuff. You're listening to what they have to say. And I steal the line all the time, and I will give Kevin Briggs all the credit in the world for it. So just know this isn't my line. Listen to understand. We all listen to respond. Even now in this conversation, we're listening and how we're going to respond to a question, how we're whatever. When you're talking to somebody who's suicidal, it's not listening to respond. It's listening to understand what they're going through. And if you can do that while they're telling you what's going on, you can ask the questions, okay, are you married? Yeah. Okay. How many kids do you have? Okay. And you're trying to understand their life. If you listen to understand what they're going through, they feel a lot more comfortable talking to you, and they'll continue to talk to you. And like Manisha said, it's not going to happen every time. Unfortunately, this is not an exact science, and you can talk to somebody for hours and they still go ahead and do it.
Right.
Just realize that. But like anything else, it's like any medical run we've ever gone on. You could do everything right and people still die.
Absolutely.
The same goes to the suicide prevention intervention stuff. You could have doctorates from every great mental health college in
nobody
this
bats
nation.
1,000 in this business.
Nobody bats 1,000.
Yeah.
And so that's where you have to almost prepare yourself for that as well. But what you're doing is giving that person the best shot possible.
And that's what I'm hearing is we always want to know, what do I do? Okay, be aware of what your people are like under normal conditions. What are their normal operating mechanisms and processes and how they act. 2, step in when you need to, or have a process to step in, meaning I can call a Mike. It might not be my role. We might have a very good system where Mike's our guy who does this. Great, use Mike. And then the third thing is be prepared for the conversation. Mm-hmm. Now, the final thing I want to talk about in that is they said yes. Now what? Who do I call? What do I do? What is the recommended steps?
For us on the peer side, your job, and when I say peer side, I don't mean necessarily peer supporters, because anybody can be a peer in here. This doesn't have to be just a peer support person that does this.
Crew member. They're your friend. Higher rank, lower rank,
Doesn't
same
matter.
rank. Human to human. We work with the same uniform,
yes.
all that.
When I say peer, I mean it in the most broadest sense possible.
In the literal sense.
Yes. Okay. In the peer side of things, number one, you let them know that they're not going to do it alone. I'm going to be with you every step of the way here. You and I are locked in now. We're locked in for a lifetime. You're not getting rid of me. But let's find some resources that are available. Now, if you're a peer supporter, you have those resources on hand pretty quickly, right? But if you don't, I'm going to stick with you. We're going to get a hold of our local peer support team, our local clinician, whoever it may be, and I'm going to help you get some resources. But I'm not leaving you until we get some resources. And that's where you look for the resources. You can go to the website, which is www.fst5.org, or you can pick up the phone anywhere in Michigan at any time of day and call 1-833-34-STRONG. And whoever picks up the phone is a first responder. It's not, you're not talking to somebody who doesn't know the job that you're doing or the personality that you may have. They're all crisis trained as well. So even if you don't have a friend that says, hey, listen, I'm seeing these things, let's go find some help. If you're sitting there and you're having these thoughts and you're contemplating these things, pick up the phone and call, because there's going to be somebody to talk to who knows your job and is a peer. And they can get you resources. Hey, I live in whatever county. What resources do you have near me? and they're going to rifle off a whole bunch. Hey, I need to talk to a peer. Even if you don't want to talk to a clinician, I need to talk to a peer right now. Who do you have that's close to me? They have those resources.
Yeah, you may not want to talk to somebody in your department.
Exactly. And that happens a lot of times.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's the resources are there, right? We can lead everybody to water. We need you to pick up the phone. We need you to drink. Okay.
Yeah, we know there's people that need this.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like we can only do so much. And what I'm saying is just take the extra second. If you think there's nothing else in this world that's going to help you, or there's nobody in this world to talk to, I'm telling you right now, you call that phone number, there's somebody to talk to that cares. That's what I'm telling them.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
I know. Great episode.
Mm-hmm.
Let's prevent it. Okay, so to kind of recap, we got to know that when there's a behavioral change in our coworkers, we got to have a process at our departments for somebody to step in and go talk to them. At some departments, it's a, hey, let the peer team know. Sometimes it's go ask the person. Sometimes it's both. Sometimes it's dependent on the person that you're dealing with or the group you're dealing with. And then we got to be prepared by having a process that we all have access to at our agencies when somebody says, yeah, I do need help, or yes, I do want to commit suicide. And we need to actually be able to act on that immediately. So it sounds like having a policy or a standard operating guideline at every agency of what do we do and how do we roll this out makes a lot of sense. And at the end of it, it's just about being a friend and a colleague and a human being to connect with people that may need us for any reason. And we're talking about suicide, but they may just have anxiety that's crushing them right now from a family incident or a friend incident or whatever's going on with them. And so I think it's really important for everybody to share stories and show everybody they're not alone by sharing experiences. So as we close to the next section, we're going to really highlight some stories of others that have been affected by suicide, whether it's family member, coworker, and then what to do. So any other closing thoughts on that, guys?
Just be a human being. Talk to the people. More than once in my life, I found out way after the fact that a conversation that I thought was a nothing conversation turned out to be the conversation that saved somebody, and I didn't find out till years later. Whenever the opportunity arises, have the conversation, because to you it might be a small conversation. What you don't know is that conversation might be the world to somebody else.
We want to be able to, we're not going to prevent everything, but we can reduce the uncomfortable feelings about having this conversation. So have the conversation.
Absolutely. Well, no further ado. And now, as we shift focus, let's listen to the personal stories of frontline workers who have been deeply impacted by suicide. These narratives are poignant reminders of why our efforts in prevention and support are so crucial. First, we hear from Christy Burris, a retired 911 dispatcher who bravely shares her journey from suicidal ideation to finding hope through therapy and peer support. Christy's story emphasizes the critical importance of reaching out and the transformative power of the right help at the right time.
As a 911 dispatcher, I wanted to be, I had started my career with paramedic firefighting and then went on to dispatch for a multitude of reasons. And one of the things that I was really good at was compartmentalizing, which is good on its surface, but if that's all you do and you don't unload, then it's very bad. I had shoved stuff down, and of course everybody has history from childhood or teenhood or adulthood that follows you into your careers. So I had become so basically dead inside that I really didn't care about anything. And when something else traumatic happened in my life, I felt that I had no way out. It was a heavy, heavy suicide ideations, as in I was very close. I went to a class taught by a frontline instructor, a Dearborn firefighter, that was talking about suicide writ. And the whole class was great. But one of the things that one of the videos said was everybody, all the suicide survivors, when they said, hey, as I stepped off that bridge or pulled that trigger, I realized I didn't want to die, that I had something to live for. That line put me in check. And I was able to go, okay, I can get some light in this darkness. Then I sought therapy, and it was a life changer to find the right therapist, somebody that knew first responders, knew the stuff that I had heard, had seen, and was able to help me through. And with the peer support from a lot of the frontline peers and our own peers on our team, it was a lifesaver. And now I know that if I reach out, it's normal. It's amazing how many people are like, oh my God, in my own mind, I think this isn't normal and everybody's going to think I'm crazy. But as you start to talk, everybody else goes, oh my God, I used to feel that way too. You have that hope. There's always hope. Hang on, pain ends. And it's amazing when you get out on the other side. I'm not saying everything's going to be sunshine and roses, but there is that ability. And if you reach out, you will feel a lot better. And you keep reaching out. Fall down 7, stand up 8. That's kind of cliche, but it really is the way it works.
Next, Officer Steve Dlazinski recounts the devastating loss of his best friend and fellow officer to suicide. His story underscores the importance of having those hard conversations and the profound impact it can have on the lives of others.
The day before Thanksgiving in 2020 was just like any other normal day for me. I had been working afternoon, so I worked till midnight the day before, and then I woke up about 10:30 to about 10 missed phone calls between coworkers, close friends, other friends that were coworkers at the department, my boss. And like any veteran guy, you never call your boss back first. You call your buddy at the department to find out what's going on. I called him back, and he goes, hey, did you hear? He didn't say anything. He said, hey, did you hear? I go, no. And at that moment, I knew it was something serious. And then that's when he told me that Sergeant Chris Hampton had taken his own life on duty. Chris was a very close friend of mine. We had ridden together in a car for probably 3 years on midnights, and then we jumped over to a border crime team and had worked the same team for probably another 3 years after that. Super close. I stood in his wedding. He stood in mine. Our kids were born 16 weeks apart. So it was just one of those things where, you don't know a person before the job, but then they become your best friend while you're working. And Chris truly was one of my best friends. The Wednesday morning before Thanksgiving, from my accounts that I had spoken with everybody else, was like any other day. He had come in. He was a sergeant at the time. He addressed his team at roll call, went to the office, typed a few notes on the computer, and then got in his patrol car and left for the day, like nothing was wrong. About 15 minutes later, after he left the station, he had driven down to a parking lot in an abandoned building about a quarter mile west of the police station. On the dashboard of his car, he laid out some personal effects, a suicide letter, and then went underneath the overhang of that abandoned building and took his own life with his service weapon. The impact around the department was definitely shattering, if I could put it into one word. Everybody that knew Chris, every wake, every funeral you go to, you hear, oh, he's such a great guy. But Chris really lit up that department. He was one of those guys that would always joke, would always have a smile on his face. If you didn't have a smile, he would make sure that he tried to put one on. In this line of work, law enforcement especially, people have egos, people have attitudes and cliques, and it's very hard to make it through a 25-year career without someone not liking you. And I personally don't believe anybody disliked Chris. He was just that type of person. So for that to happen, personally, I took it extremely hard. It took me a long time to get through. I'm not going to say get over, but get through. And to be completely honest, I'm not sure if I'm still completely through it yet. And the department, same thing. A lot of people were affected from, people who knew Chris, worked with Chris, got hired in with Chris, were subordinates to Chris, just to the people that saw him on a day-to-day basis. He really, truly affected everybody. We now have a run in his honor for mental health that we do every October. And I would be very surprised to say, even today, the loss of his life is still felt around that department. Every first responding profession has that stigma of reaching out for help. We always want to help others. You can sit here and preach stigma all day long and how we need to break it. And I think now in 2024, we're doing a pretty good job of at least trying to reach out and let people know that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to ask for help. But the importance of just knowing that one person, even in a passing conversation, can change the outcome of someone's life if they are going down a path like this is so important. I told myself after Chris died that I would never not have that hard conversation again. Whether I felt it, whether someone addressed me, said, hey, check in on our buddy, check on this guy and this girl on nights. I made sure that I promised myself for Chris that I would never not ask those hard questions. Because just speaking from a police officer's perspective, you chase a bad guy in the alley, you kick in the door on the search warrant. That's light work. That's easy stuff. But really to address your coworkers and your friends that are going through, whether it's a mental health crisis or something personal in their lives, that's the hardest part for us to address as people, because we are type A, because we want to help others, but we don't want to help ourselves sometimes.
Finally, Ashley Freeman, an EMT, reflects on the pain of losing her father to suicide. Her heartfelt story is a reminder that while grief is a heavy burden, it is okay to find moments of joy amid the sorrow.
Losing a loved one to suicide is a pain that's indescribable. My dad wasn't just a parent to me, he was my best friend. He was my role model, and he was my mentor when I was going to be following in his footsteps and working in EMS. But all of that was shattered when he died. All of the dreams and the plans that we made together were gone. And it left this void that felt impossible to fill. When I lost my dad, I struggled with a lot of emotions. I felt guilt, frustration, anger, and grief. I wondered if there was something that I missed or if there was something that I could have done differently. But the emotion that I felt the most was grief. In that moment, I didn't just lose my dad, but I lost all of the dreams and all of the plans that we had shared together. I had to learn to live without my dad. I had to learn how to navigate life's accomplishments without him. We had plans of me being his partner at work, and we joked about me accidentally calling him dad in front of our patients. But I also had dreams of being able to watch my dad be a grandpa. I had dreams of being able to send my kids to his house and then come home all sugared up and being spoiled by their grandpa and having all these great memories with their grandpa. And I had dreams of watching my dad grow old, and all of that was gone now. I also struggled because I didn't have him to lean on or to talk to as his daughter. When I had a bad day, I don't have my dad who I can just call and talk to. Following in his footsteps, I always thought that after I had a bad call, I'd be able to call him and he would talk me through it. But I don't get that. I still have his number in my phone because it reminds me of him. But at the same time, I know that I can't call it because he's not there to answer it. Each of my accomplishments are kind of bittersweet. There's a part of me that feels like I shouldn't be happy. Like I shouldn't be celebrating because he isn't here to share in those moments with me. I got my EMT license and I did it. I followed our plans and our dreams without him, but I felt like I shouldn't celebrate that because he wasn't here to see all of that. The joy I feel is always tinged with some sadness. It's kind of a reminder that he isn't here anymore. He doesn't get to experience all these things with me. With grief, there are good days and there are bad days. On the good days, I can smile at the memories and I can feel proud of everything that I've accomplished, and I can feel joy that he would have felt proud of me and proud to call me his daughter. But on the bad days, it feels like the grief is so fresh that no time has passed and it feels like I just lost him. I've learned that the pain of losing someone never really goes away. You kind of learn to just live with that pain. But I've also learned that it's okay to feel joy and happiness and pride, even if it is mixed with sadness. I know that I will always have the memories of my dad with me, and those will never go away. I've learned that grief is a journey that has no final destination. But with that, I've learned that I can carry that grief with me while still continuing to move forward. I can use that grief as a wind in the sails to help me move forward instead of an anchor that keeps me stuck where I'm at. I want to urge anyone who's struggling to reach out for help. You're not alone. There's always somebody to talk to. Our crisis line is there 24/7. They understand what we're going through as first responders. And knowing that you're not alone and there's others out there who are struggling too and who are there to help you will make you want to reach out. I don't want anyone to have to struggle alone, and I want others to be able to keep their dreams and their plans and to be able to be grandpa and spoil their kids. I want you to be able to watch your dad or your mom grow old and make jokes about them using a cane. And I want everyone to be able to experience all the joys that life has to give and not leaving too soon.
Thank you for joining us in the Minds on the Frontline podcast. We hope everyone enjoyed this episode. We have more great content coming out soon. Please check us out on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and make sure to like and subscribe to all Minds on the Frontline podcast social media channels. Thank you for listening to the Minds on the Frontline podcast. Have a great day.